This lecture, we're going to do a bit of an intro to IoT, like what it actually is and what things make up an IoT system, and also a bit of history around IoT as well. So what is IoT? Well, IoT stands for Internet of Things. And basically, when we're talking about IoT, we've got a definition here, a set of interconnected computing devices, mechanical and digital machines, objects, animals, people that are provided with unique identifiers. So a whole bunch of things can be IoT devices or things that IoT connects to the internet. They can transfer data over a network without requiring human to human or human to computer interaction. So a lot of this is going on behind the scenes without us needing to do anything. That's a formal definition taken from that website there. Here's a simplified definition that I think captures the essence of what IoT actually is. And this is my own definition. So basically, we've got a whole series of objects. So these are the things that we talk about in the Internet of Things. We somehow connect those things to the internet, and there's lots of different ways to do so. And in doing so, they're uploading data and or being controlled remotely. So uploading data, we've got sensors that sense things about the environment and upload that data. And we also have actuators and devices that we can control remotely. And we base that on how we control them based on decisions that are made by humans, like humans can have an app that they can control their air conditioning from, for example, but also decisions made by algorithms. And so we've got a collection of computing that's done there in this IoT scenario. And you see here the basic flow of how IoT works, from taking that sensor data. Now we'll turn our attention to the benefits of IoT, and there's quite a few benefits. And don't worry, there's some issues as well. We'll discuss them later on. But one of the benefits of IoT is that we can make decisions based on data rather than just guessing. You don't want to just lick your finger and stick it in the wind and say, oh, I don't know what I want to do. Let's do this, but with no real reason to do that. Well, IoT allows us to collect a whole lot of data and work out what the data says we should do, or what direction we should go in, or at least what things that we need to actually make intelligent decisions. For example, what things do people want to buy, or how are they using a particular bridge, or when's it being used, for example. These are really helpful because it means that to collect this data, we don't need to send people into the field 24/7. We can have sensors sending all this data back to us 24/7. Which is a whole lot more economical and in many instances a whole lot safer as well. It also lowers our costs. So rather than having to check everything constantly over and over and over again to see if a particular conditions occurred, we can have our devices report when particular conditions occurred. And for example, this picture above is an automatic rat trap. When a rat goes in there, it uses CO2 to kill the rat, knocks it on the head with a little cylinder, and then it actually reports that to users so they know that a rat's died and that it should be removed, or that the cylinder needs replacing. All sorts of useful things there in terms of lowering costs, that you don't have to constantly check, is there a rat there, is it full or is it empty, and so on. Likewise, if you're out, you can turn the air conditioner off or the heater off away from home, and you can check that remotely without having to drive home and think, did I leave that on or did I turn it off or not? There's security things as well, where we can remotely control and remotely monitor our property and check that there's no home invaders or anything like that. And it avoids that polling. For example, in a vending machine, rather than sending someone out every 3 days to check, is there Coca-Cola and is there Fanta and is there Lift and all those different drinks, you can have the vending machine report back saying, we're out of Coke, or we're out of chips, or we're out of whatever it happens to be. And they can send someone out to fill it when it needs filling. And sometimes, for example, at a university during semester break, it won't need filling nearly as often as during semester when there's lots and lots of people around. Which leads us to the history of IoT. Where did it all begin and where did it all come from? Well, the term came about in 1999. Kevin Ashton was with Procter & Gamble, and he was proposing IoT specifically looking at RFID tags and using them for inventory tracking. And RFID tags and various tags like that are commonly used for inventory tracking, along with barcodes and other things like that as well. Some airports use them, where you go into an airport and they'll put an RFID tag on your bag so it can automatically be scanned not optically, but using electromagnetic waves as it passes through to make sure it goes to the right plane and goes to the right destination ultimately. 5 years on from then, Cornelius Peterson, now he was the CEO of NetSilicon, said the next era of information technology will be dominated by, well, IoT devices that we know today. Network devices will ultimately gain in popularity and significance to the extent they'll far exceed the number of network computers and workstations. So he's saying that these devices that are sending information onto the internet will exceed the number of computers that we're actually using. And this is the trend that we see occurring, that there's a proliferation of these devices, small devices collecting data and sending that data to the internet. Now, Cisco Systems, which is one of the major networking companies around the world, made an interesting observation and said IoT really took off around 2008, 2009. And that's when the new things to people ratio grew from 0.08 in 2003 to 1.84 in 2010. So in 2010, for every one person coming into the world, there's 1.84 devices. So a huge number of devices that are being created. Having said that, though, there's a much larger number of devices being made these days. Now, in terms of looking at the history of IoT, well, we've been connecting things to the internet in one form or another for quite a long time. Well before that, 1999, when the term IoT was first coined. Probably one of the first examples that's often cited is in 1982, where a Coke machine at Carnegie Mellon University in the Department of Computer Science was connected to ARPANET. ARPANET was essentially the predecessor of the internet, with just a few hundred network computers sharing information between each other. They put a bunch of sensors on. Basically, each time a drink was ordered, a light would flash momentarily for a couple of seconds on the display and then turn off. So they were able to instrument that with a light sensor to work out when something was ordered. So they're able to report how many of each drink there was based on how many times each of those lights had flashed, and also whether the drinks were cold or not using a temperature sensor. Now, although IoT had a relatively small and recent beginning, really, it's taken off rapidly, with billions and billions of new devices being added each year, as you see in this chart here, and that will only keep on growing over time. In terms of where these devices are, well, there's a huge variety of different application areas of these, from retail and work sites to human devices, even things like Fitbits and things that allow us to do performance monitoring or monitoring how many steps and things you're making. Factories is a huge area where we're having all sorts of sensors to measure things and automate parts of factories. Smart homes are another area, and that's one segment of the market. Vehicles are having a number of devices that can report back on performance of the vehicle and even helping schedule in preventative maintenance, for example. Smart cities are another big area where councils are trying to use IoT devices to work out how people are actually using the cities. And things like, for example, smart rubbish bins, where rather than sending someone out to empty the rubbish bin every second day, they can empty the rubbish bin when it's full or when it's nearing full. So there's a whole lot of useful applications for IoT in those smart city spaces.